"Get that one off the block. She's too colored for decent work," shouts the auctioneer as the trembling young woman stands beneath the scorching sun, her family having sold her for being deemed too dark-skinned for respectable service. The jeering crowd dismisses her with cruel laughter and turned backs, certain she'll end up in the harshest cotton fields or worse. Her fate seems sealed, a lifetime of back-breaking labor under merciless masters who see her only as defective property. But from the crowd's edge emerges a towering, silent rancher whose piercing gaze sees something entirely different. His mysterious arrival will either damn her to an even darker destiny or unlock secrets that could transform them both forever. Yet beneath their potential salvation lurks a dangerous truth. Their connection threatens to expose a hidden network that powerful enemies would kill to destroy. Will his unexpected choice save her or seal both their deaths? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. The scrub brush trembled in Henrietta Washington's hands as she worked the cabin floor. Each stroke reminded her of tomorrow's auction. Her sister Viola sat by the window, admiring her reflection in a cracked mirror. "At least you'll fetch a decent price," their father Jeremiah muttered from his chair. His weathered face showed the weight of impossible choices. Light skin opens doors, dark skin closes them. Viola's cheeks flushed with guilt. She knew her fairer complexion meant better prospects. Henrietta kept scrubbing without looking up. The debt collector's visit 3 days earlier had sealed their fate. $20 owed or lose the land. Jeremiah Washington had no choice but to sell his daughters. Henrietta rose and emptied the wash bucket outside. The Texas sun beat down mercilessly on their small plot near Cedar Ridge. She could see the town square in the distance where tomorrow would change everything. That evening, she waited until the house fell silent. A candle stub provided just enough light to read the worn Bible she'd found years ago. The words came easily now after years of secret practice. She'd taught herself letters by tracing them in dirt. Numbers came next, then full sentences. Nobody knew, not even Viola. A floorboard creaked. Henrietta quickly hid the book as her cousin Eliza appeared in the doorway. "Still awake?" Eliza's voice dripped with false sympathy. "Nervous about tomorrow?" Henrietta nodded silently. "Don't worry, someone will take you. Fieldwork pays the bills." Eliza's smile never reached her eyes. Some masters aren't too harsh. The next morning arrived too quickly. Henrietta wore her only decent dress, patched but clean. Viola clutched her hand as they walked toward town. Cedar Ridge's main square buzzed with activity. A wooden platform stood in the center like a stage for tragedy. Men in fine clothes examined the goods while women whispered behind fans. The auctioneer, a thick man with gold teeth, called the crowd to order. One by one, people stepped onto the platform. Viola went third. "Look at this beauty," the auctioneer announced. "Light complexion, gentle features, perfect for household service." Bidding started immediately. A merchant's wife raised her hand repeatedly until she won. Viola cast one last apologetic glance at Henrietta before disappearing into her new life. Henrietta's turn came last. "Now this one." The auctioneer's enthusiasm dimmed. Strong back for fieldwork. Good health despite the darker features. Silence stretched across the square. A few men examined her hands for calluses. Others shook their heads and walked away. "Too dark for housework," someone muttered. "Field hand at best," another added. Eliza stood with a group of women, whispering and pointing. Her enjoyment of the spectacle was obvious. The bidding started at $2. It crawled upward reluctantly. $5, $7, $9. "Going once for $9, the auctioneer called without enthusiasm. Henrietta closed her eyes. $9 for a lifetime of back-breaking labor under an unwilling master. She thought of the Bible hidden under her mattress. All those secret hours learning would die with her dreams. Going twice for $9. The crowd began to disperse. Some buyers headed toward other platforms. The auctioneer raised his gavel. $50. Every head turned. A tall man in a fine black coat stood at the crowd's edge. His hat shadowed his face, but his voice carried authority. The auctioneer blinked in surprise. "Did you say 50, sir?" "I did." Murmurs rippled through the square. $50 was more than most household servants brought. Why would anyone pay premium price for field labor? The mysterious bidder approached the platform. Samuel Hollis removed his hat, revealing steel-gray eyes and weathered features that spoke of both wealth and purpose. "Any other bids?" the auctioneer asked hopefully. Silence. "Sold to Mr. Hollis for $50. Henrietta's legs nearly gave out. $50 suggested expectations she couldn't imagine meeting. What kind of labor commanded such a price? Samuel paid in crisp bills without haggling. He gestured toward a fine wagon hitched with 2 strong horses. "Come along." Henrietta gathered her small bundle of possessions. As she passed Eliza, her cousin's expression had shifted from amusement to confusion. Why had the wealthy rancher chosen the darkest woman at auction? The wagon ride began in tense silence. Samuel's hands were steady on the reins, but revealed nothing of his intentions. Henrietta studied the passing landscape, wondering if she'd ever see Cedar Ridge again. "You can read," Samuel said suddenly. Henrietta's heart stopped. It wasn't a question. "I saw how you looked at the auction notices. Your eyes tracked the words." Terror flooded through her. Reading was dangerous for someone in her position. It suggested ideas above her station. "I don't know what you mean, sir." Samuel glanced at her with something that might have been amusement. "We'll see." The Hollis Ranch appeared in the distance like a small kingdom. Fine buildings, well-maintained fences, and workers who looked healthy and purposeful. This was prosperity beyond anything Henrietta had imagined. As they approached the main house, she prepared herself for assignment to the kitchen or laundry. Instead, Samuel led her toward the front door. "Where are we going?" "Sir?" Samuel paused with his hand on the doorknob. "To change your life." The front door of the Hollis house opened to reveal something impossible. Books lined the walls from floor to ceiling. A grand piano sat in the corner. Oil paintings depicted landscapes and portraits of dignified people. Henrietta had never seen such wealth up close. Her bare feet seemed too dirty for the polished wooden floors. Samuel noticed her hesitation. The books won't bite. He led her past the main sitting room into a smaller chamber. More books filled these shelves, but these looked different. Worn spines suggested frequent use. A large desk dominated the center with papers scattered across its surface. "Sit down." Henrietta perched on the edge of a leather chair, ready to bolt if needed. Samuel opened a wooden box on his desk. Inside lay dozens of letters tied with blue ribbon. He selected one and unfolded it carefully. "This letter is dated 12 years ago. My mother wrote it." His voice softened. "She was a schoolteacher before she married my father." The paper looked official, covered in neat handwriting. Samuel turned it toward her. "Can you read this?" Henrietta's mouth went dry. Admitting literacy could mean punishment. But lying seemed equally dangerous now. "Some of it, sir." "Read the first paragraph aloud." Her hands shook as she took the letter. The words swam before her eyes, then focused. "My dearest Samuel, I must tell you about a remarkable student. Though I am forbidden to teach such lessons, I cannot ignore exceptional minds when they appear." Samuel nodded for her to continue. "Young Henrietta shows understanding beyond her years. She grasps mathematics quickly and reads with genuine comprehension. If circumstances were different, she could become a teacher herself." The letter fell from Henrietta's hands. Her name on that page made no sense. "My mother taught you in secret," Samuel explained. "Saturday afternoons when others thought you were gathering firewood." Memory flooded back. The kind white woman who appeared at the creek behind their old cabin. Margaret Hollis had indeed taught her letters, numbers, and reading during those stolen hours. Henrietta thought she'd imagined the gentle voice encouraging her curiosity. "She died 5 years ago," Samuel continued. "Left me these letters and a mission." He pulled out more correspondence. Letter after letter described Henrietta's progress, her hunger for knowledge, her natural ability to teach younger children. I've been searching for you ever since. When I heard about the auction, I knew it had to be the same person. Henrietta struggled to process this revelation. Why would you search for me, sir? Samuel stood and walked to a bookshelf. Behind the books lay a hidden door. It opened to reveal another room, this one set up like a classroom. Desks arranged in rows, a blackboard at the front, more books and writing supplies than she'd ever seen. This is what my mother started, what I've continued. Samuel's voice carried quiet pride. We teach reading, writing, and basic business skills to freed people who never had the chance to learn. The magnitude of what she was seeing hit her slowly. This wasn't just a wealthy man's hobby. This was a school, a secret school. 3 nights a week. Students come here after dark. They learn what they need to build better lives for themselves and their families. Henrietta walked between the desks, touching each one lightly. How many students? 42 right now. Some travel 20 miles to get here. The risk suddenly became clear. Teaching freed slaves advanced skills was controversial at best. In some places, it was illegal. What happens if you're caught? Samuel's expression grew serious. Prison for me, worse for anyone helping. Then why do it? Because my mother believed knowledge changes everything. She saw that in you 12 years ago. He returned to his desk and pulled out a thick ledger. Names filled page after page. Next to each name were notes about progress, achievements, and what each student had accomplished after leaving. Thomas Crane learned to read here. Now he owns a successful carpentry business in Dallas. Sarah Mitchell mastered bookkeeping. She manages finances for 3 local shops. The list continued. Former students who'd become shop owners, teachers themselves, community leaders. The secret school had quietly transformed dozens of lives. I need help expanding this work, Samuel said. My mother's letters suggested you had a gift for teaching, that you could reach people in ways I cannot. The offer hung in the air between them. Partnership instead of servitude. Purpose instead of meaningless labor. You're asking me to be a teacher? I'm asking you to be yourself, the woman my mother saw all those years ago. Henrietta thought of her sister Viola, assigned to household duties that would never challenge her mind. Of her father's assumption that dark skin meant limited options, of Eliza's cruel certainty that field work was her only destiny. What if I'm not as capable as your mother believed? Samuel smiled for the first time since they'd met. There's one way to find out. He opened a primer and set it on the desk. Our next class is Thursday evening. 5 students who can barely write their own names. The book felt warm in her hands. Real teaching materials, not scraps of paper or dirt for practice. They'll learn better from someone who understands their struggles, Samuel added. Someone who knows what it means to hunger for knowledge. Thursday was 2 days away. 2 days to prepare for something she'd dreamed about, but never dared hope for. What do I need to do? Be the teacher you were meant to be. Thursday evening arrived with nervous anticipation. Henrietta arranged the classroom precisely, placing pencils and paper at each desk. Her hands trembled slightly as she wrote simple words on the blackboard. The first student arrived as darkness fell. Marcus, a freedman in his 30s, removed his hat respectfully. His calloused hands showed years of hard labor, but his eyes held determination. Evening, miss. Mr. Hollis said you'd be teaching us. 4 more students followed. Sarah, barely 20 with a baby on her hip. Old Pete, whose gray beard couldn't hide his eager smile. 2 brothers, James and Robert, who worked at the lumber mill. They settled into desks designed for children, their adult frames awkward but willing. Henrietta faced them from behind the teacher's desk, heart pounding. Who can write their name? 3 hands rose uncertainly. Show me. Marcus scratched out shaky letters. Sarah managed her first name only. Pete's attempt was barely legible. Instead of correcting them immediately, Henrietta walked to the blackboard. She wrote each name properly, then had them copy underneath. Your name is the most important word you'll ever write. Practice until it flows like water. The lesson continued with basic letters. But Henrietta noticed something traditional teachers missed. These students learned differently than children. They needed practical applications immediately. James, you said you want to start a business. What would you sell? Furniture. I carve chairs in my spare time. Henrietta wrote chairs on the board. Then table. Wood. Price. These are words you'll use every day. Learn them first. The approach worked. Within an hour, James was copying business words while his brother focused on numbers for measuring lumber. Samuel watched from the doorway, nodding approvingly. Word spread carefully through the community. By the third week, 8 students attended. By the 5th week, 12. Henrietta developed teaching methods nobody had tried before. She used song to teach spelling, created stories that included practical vocabulary, turned mathematics into solving real problems students faced daily. Sarah learned to calculate her sewing income. Pete mastered reading contracts so nobody could cheat him. The brothers planned their furniture business on paper before risking their savings. Samuel provided supplies and kept careful records. But the teaching belonged entirely to Henrietta. Her natural ability flourished in ways that amazed them both. "You make it look effortless," he said one evening after class. "It doesn't feel effortless. It feels like breathing." Their working relationship deepened through shared purpose. Samuel handled the administrative details while Henrietta focused on teaching. They spent hours planning lessons and tracking student progress. Gradually, something else grew between them. Respect became admiration. Admiration became something neither dared name. Samuel commissioned a portrait painter from Austin. Henrietta protested the expense and attention. "This work deserves to be remembered," he insisted. The portrait captured her in the classroom, surrounded by books, with the quiet confidence of someone who had found her calling. Samuel hung it prominently in the main parlor. Ranch hands began asking for reading lessons. Henrietta started morning sessions for those who worked during evening classes. The secret school was becoming less secret, but Samuel's reputation protected them. Success brought new challenges. More students meant more supplies, more risk, more attention. One afternoon, a familiar figure appeared at the ranch gate. Viola had come to visit, her merchant family's carriage waiting nearby. The sisters embraced awkwardly. Viola's neat dress and styled hair showed her improved circumstances, but her eyes held confusion. "The town is talking about you," Viola said as they walked toward the house. "What are they saying?" "That Mr. Hollis treats you like a guest instead of a servant. That you eat at his table and speak as his equal." Henrietta chose her words carefully. The school remained secret, even from family. "He values education. I help with correspondence." Viola seemed satisfied with this explanation, but her expression suggested deeper curiosity. Samuel appeared for dinner, greeting Viola courteously. The 3 of them shared a meal that would have been unthinkable months earlier. 2 former auction goods dining as honored guests with a wealthy white rancher. "Your sister has remarkable talents," Samuel told Viola. "Henrietta always was the smart one. Father said it wouldn't help her much." "Your father was wrong." After Viola left, Henrietta felt unsettled. Her sister's visit reminded her how unusual their situation had become. "Are we taking too many risks?" she asked Samuel. "Knowledge is always a risk. That's what makes it valuable." The next week brought more concerning developments. Supplies went missing from the classroom. Someone had been asking questions in town about the ranch's evening activities. Samuel hired additional security but tried to maintain normalcy. Classes continued as scheduled. Then Eliza Washington arrived in Cedar Ridge with her husband, seeking business opportunities. She took rooms at the boarding house and began socializing with local women. Her presence made Henrietta nervous for reasons she couldn't articulate. "My cousin has always been jealous of what others achieve," she told Samuel. "Can she cause real problems?" "Eliza finds ways to profit from other people's troubles." The warning proved prophetic. Within days, Eliza was asking pointed questions about Henrietta's elevated status. She visited shops, attended church socials, and listened carefully to gossip. Students reported seeing strangers watching the ranch at night. Someone was definitely investigating their activities. Samuel increased precautions, but the damage was already beginning. Their perfect secret world was about to collide with dangerous realities. The question was no longer whether they would be discovered, but what Eliza planned to do with whatever information she gathered. The federal marshals arrived at dawn on a Tuesday, their badges gleaming in the early light. Samuel met them at the front door while Henrietta watched from the kitchen window, her blood turning to ice. "Mr. Hollis, we have warrants to search your property for evidence of illegal activities." The lead marshal, a thin man named Davies, unfolded official papers. Behind him stood 3 deputies and a man in a black suit who looked like a government agent. "What activities?" "Reports of insurgent meetings, unlawful assembly, harboring fugitive property." Samuel's jaw tightened. "I run a cattle ranch, Marshal, nothing more." "We'll determine that." The search began immediately. Deputies spread through the house while Davies questioned Samuel in the parlor. Henrietta slipped out the back door and ran toward the hidden classroom. She had minutes at most. Books went into flour sacks. Papers disappeared into the fireplace. The blackboard was wiped clean and turned to face the wall. By the time the deputies found the secret room, it looked like storage space. Empty desks could belong to anyone. The blackboard appeared unused for years. But Davies wasn't satisfied. He studied the room carefully, running his fingers along desk edges for chalk dust. "Interesting storage arrangement, Mr. Hollis. My mother was a teacher. I kept her old furniture." "How touching." The real blow came when Davies produced a second set of papers. These weren't search warrants. They were ownership claims. "Henrietta Washington is documented property of the Caldwell plantation in Louisiana. She's been reported as stolen goods." Henrietta's world tilted. The Caldwell plantation had never owned her. She'd been born free in Texas, sold only because of her family's debts. "Those documents are false," Samuel said immediately. "That's for the courts to decide. Until then, she comes with us." Samuel stepped between Henrietta and the marshals. "I have bills of sale proving legal purchase. From a man who had no right to sell her." The trap was perfect. Someone had forged ownership papers going back years. Even if Samuel proved his purchase was legitimate, these documents claimed her family never had the right to sell her. Davies signaled his deputies. "Take her into custody." "Wait." Samuel's voice carried desperate authority. "I'll post bond, whatever amount you require." "No bond for stolen property, sir." Henrietta realized the full scope of the betrayal. Only someone with intimate knowledge of her background could have crafted such detailed forgeries. Only someone who knew about the school would have timed this perfectly. Eliza had orchestrated everything. The marshals shackled Henrietta's hands despite Samuel's protests. As they led her toward their wagon, she caught sight of a familiar figure watching from behind the oak trees. Eliza stood just out of sight, her expression mixing satisfaction with nervous anticipation. She'd gotten exactly what she wanted. "I'll fight this," Samuel called as they loaded Henrietta into the wagon. "Fight all you want. The law is clear on stolen property." The wagon rolled away from the ranch, leaving Samuel standing helplessly in the dust. Through the rear bars, Henrietta watched her new life disappear. The ride to the county jail gave her time to understand the full conspiracy. The forged papers were just the beginning. Someone had also reported the school as an illegal insurgent operation, designed to incite rebellion among freed slaves. If convicted, Samuel faced federal charges. The students who attended classes could be arrested as co-conspirators. 42 lives hung in the balance because of Eliza's greed. At the jail, Davies processed Henrietta as stolen property awaiting transport to Louisiana. The cell was small, damp, and filled with despair. But Henrietta's despair transformed into cold determination. Eliza had made one crucial mistake. She'd assumed her cousin was still the helpless girl from the auction. That girl would have broken under this pressure. The woman Henrietta had become started planning her counterattack. News of the arrests spread through Cedar Ridge like wildfire. Public opinion split sharply. Samuel's supporters argued for his character and contributions to the community. Others whispered that they'd always suspected something unnatural about his treatment of Henrietta. Eliza positioned herself as a concerned citizen who'd recognized illegal activity. She gave interviews to the local newspaper, expressing sadness at her cousin's situation. I tried to warn Mr. Hollis that Henrietta belonged to another family. He wouldn't listen. The lies came smoothly, wrapped in false concern. Meanwhile, Samuel liquidated assets to pay legal fees. His lawyer, a competent man named Morrison, reviewed the forged documents with growing frustration. These papers look authentic. Whoever created them knew exactly what they were doing. They have to be forgeries. Henrietta was born free. Proving that will take months. She could be shipped to Louisiana before we build a case. Samuel paced his empty house, surrounded by evidence of the life they'd built together. Henrietta's portrait still hung in the parlor, but now it felt like a memorial. Students from the secret school sent messages of support, but carefully. Association with Samuel could destroy their own lives. Marcus, the first student Henrietta had taught, risked everything by visiting Samuel openly. "Miss Henrietta saved my family. I can read contracts now. Nobody cheats me anymore. Tell that to the newspapers. They won't print words from someone like me." The truth of that statement highlighted their impossible situation. The people whose lives had been transformed couldn't speak publicly without destroying themselves. In her cell, Henrietta received one visitor. Viola came with tears streaming down her face. "I never wanted this for you. I know. Eliza says she's trying to help, but something feels wrong." Henrietta gripped her sister's hands through the bars. "Viola, I need you to do something for me. Anything. Go to our old cabin. In the floor under my bed, there's a loose board. Underneath you'll find papers. Bring them to Mr. Morrison." "What papers?" "Proof of who I really am." Viola found the papers exactly where Henrietta said they would be. Birth certificates, freedom documents, and most importantly, her grandmother's manumission papers dating back 30 years. The documents proved 3 generations of free status. She delivered them to Morrison's office at midnight, terrified of being seen. The lawyer studied each page by lamplight, his excitement growing. "These change everything. But I need more evidence to prove the Louisiana documents are forged." Henrietta had anticipated this. From her jail cell, she sent word through the network of former students. Sarah, who now worked at the telegraph office, began tracing the origins of the forged papers. The trail led back to a document forger in New Orleans who specialized in false ownership claims. More importantly, it led to the person who paid for the forgeries. Eliza had used her husband's business credit to commission the false papers. Bank records showed payments to the forger, travel expenses to Louisiana, and bribes to officials who filed the fraudulent claims. Samuel's investigation took a different approach. He hired a private detective to follow Eliza and document her activities. What they discovered exceeded their worst fears. Eliza hadn't just forged ownership papers. She'd been systematically positioning herself to claim Samuel's property through legal manipulation. Her plan involved having him arrested, discredited, and forced to sell the ranch to pay legal fees. She'd already approached potential buyers, offering to broker a sale at below market value. Her commission would solve her gambling debts and provide the fortune she'd always craved. The federal agent, Davies, proved more honest than expected. When presented with evidence of the forgeries, he began his own investigation. His reputation depended on not being made a fool by local criminals. Davies confronted Eliza at the boarding house on a Wednesday morning. Her confidence crumbled under professional questioning. "These Louisiana documents contain information that didn't exist when they were supposedly created." "I don't know what you mean." "The plantation owner mentioned in your papers died 5 years before the dates on these documents." Eliza's face went pale. She'd paid for expert forgeries but hadn't verified the historical details. Someone must have made a mistake. Yes, someone did. Meanwhile, Henrietta's former students organized a campaign that surprised everyone. Marcus had convinced Thomas Crane, the successful carpenter, to speak publicly. Sarah Mitchell used her business connections to gather testimonials. They couldn't defend the secret school directly, but they could demonstrate the positive impact of Samuel's character. One by one, community members came forward with stories of his generosity and integrity. The local newspaper, initially hostile, began printing these testimonials. Public opinion slowly shifted as people realized the scope of Eliza's deception. Morrison filed new motions based on the evidence Viola had provided. He also subpoenaed Eliza's financial records, revealing her gambling debts and desperate need for money. The breakthrough came when Sarah traced a telegram Eliza had sent to the New Orleans forger. The message contained specific details about Henrietta's background that only a family member would know. Rush the Caldwell papers. Need them before Tuesday. We'll pay extra for authenticity. The telegram was signed with Eliza's full name and sent from the Cedar Ridge Telegraph Office. It provided undeniable proof of the conspiracy. Davies arrested Eliza on federal charges of document forgery and fraud. Her husband, horrified by the revelations, distanced himself from her schemes. At the hearing, Morrison presented overwhelming evidence. The forged papers, the financial records, the telegrams, and testimony from the New Orleans forger who admitted creating false documents. Eliza's lawyer attempted a desperate defense, claiming she'd been trying to help her cousin by revealing the truth about her status. Then why did she pay for forged documents? Morrison asked. The lawyer had no answer. Judge Harrison reviewed the evidence methodically. The case was clear-cut once the forgeries were exposed. The charges against Mr. Hollis are dismissed. Miss Washington is hereby released from custody, her free status confirmed. The courtroom erupted in cheers from Samuel's supporters. Henrietta walked out of the jail into brilliant sunshine, free for the first time in weeks. Samuel waited on the courthouse steps. Their embrace was careful, but unmistakably joyful. I knew you'd find a way, he said. We found a way. Eliza's fall was swift and complete. Convicted on federal charges, she faced prison time and financial ruin. Her husband divorced her and returned to his family in Missouri. The secret school could now operate legally. Judge Harrison, impressed by the testimonials about its positive impact, granted official recognition. Education benefits the entire community. This work should be celebrated, not hidden. Samuel and Henrietta returned to the ranch as heroes rather than fugitives. Students who'd scattered during the crisis came back eagerly, but something had changed between them during the ordeal. The professional partnership had deepened into something more profound. They worked side by side rebuilding the program, but their conversations grew longer. Their shared glances held new meaning. One evening, as they planned lessons for the expanded school, Samuel set down his pen. I have something to tell you. Henrietta looked up from her papers. When I thought I'd lost you, I realized this wasn't just about the school anymore. The words hung in the air between them, full of possibilities neither had dared voice before. What are you saying? I'm saying that somewhere between teaching and fighting for justice, I fell in love with you. Henrietta's heart raced, but her mind remained clear. Samuel, we need to be careful. The world isn't ready for what that means. The world wasn't ready for our school either. We did it anyway. She considered his words carefully. They'd already defied convention by creating an equal partnership. Love seemed like the natural progression of everything they'd built together. What do you propose? Samuel smiled, the expression transforming his serious features. I propose we continue changing the world, one student at a time, together. 1 year later, the Hollis Ranch had transformed into something magnificent. What began as a secret school now operated as the Cedar Ridge Educational Institute, officially recognized by the state of Texas. Henrietta stood in the expanded classroom watching 43 students practice their letters. Ages ranged from 8 to 60, all united by hunger for knowledge. The hidden desks had been replaced with proper furniture. Sunlight streamed through large windows that no longer needed curtains. Samuel entered with the morning mail, including a letter that made Henrietta smile. Thomas Crane is opening a second carpentry shop in Austin. He's hiring 3 of our graduates. Success stories arrived weekly. Former students had become shop owners, teachers, bookkeepers, and community leaders. The ripple effects of education spread far beyond Cedar Ridge. "There's something else in today's mail," Samuel said, producing a small velvet box. Henrietta's breath caught. They'd discussed marriage many times, but the timing never seemed right. Building the school had consumed all their energy. "Samuel, I know what you're going to say. We're too busy. The school needs our attention." People might not understand. He knelt beside her desk as students pretended not to watch. "But I've learned that the best partnerships are built on love as much as shared purpose. Will you marry me?" The ring was simple but elegant, a single diamond that caught the morning light. Henrietta looked around the classroom at the life they'd built together. "Yes." The students erupted in cheers. Word spread through the ranch within minutes. Samuel's proposal became the first wedding anyone could remember being planned in a classroom. They chose to marry in the meadow behind the main house, the spot where Samuel had first explained his mother's mission. Viola traveled from Dallas to serve as matron of honor. Even Jeremiah Washington attended, his weathered face showing pride instead of the shame he'd carried since the auction. Judge Harrison performed the ceremony under an arch of wildflowers and sage. Samuel wore his finest suit. Henrietta chose a cream-colored dress she'd sewn herself, simple but beautiful. "Do you, Samuel Hollis, take Henrietta Washington as your wife, your partner in all endeavors, your equal in all things?" "I do." "Do you, Henrietta Washington, take Samuel Hollis as your husband, your partner in purpose, your companion in changing the world?" "I do." Their vows were personal, promising not just love but continued dedication to education and justice. When they kissed, the crowd of students, ranch hands, and community supporters cheered loud enough to be heard in town. The reception lasted until sunset. Marcus played fiddle while couples danced on the grass. Sarah organized a feast contributed by grateful families. Old Pete told stories that made everyone laugh. During the celebration, Viola pulled Henrietta aside. "I never imagined this when we stood on that auction block." "Neither did I." "Are you truly happy?" Henrietta looked across the meadow at Samuel, who was deep in conversation with 3 former students planning to open a school in San Antonio. "I'm exactly where I belong." The newlyweds spent their honeymoon traveling to Dallas and Austin, meeting with educators who wanted to replicate their model. The Cedar Ridge method was gaining attention across Texas. They returned home to find construction beginning on 2 new classroom buildings. Enrollment had grown so rapidly that expansion was necessary. "We'll need more teachers," Henrietta observed. "I have an idea about that." Samuel led her to his office, where correspondence from around the state lay organized on his desk. "Letters from qualified teachers who want to join our mission. Some are from as far away as Louisiana and Arkansas." The applications impressed Henrietta with their quality and dedication. Former plantation tutors seeking purpose, northern educators drawn by their success, even international applicants who'd heard about their innovative methods. "We could become more than a school. We could become a training center for teachers." The idea excited them both. Within 6 months, they'd established the first teacher training program specifically designed for educating freed slaves and their children. Henrietta developed the curriculum while Samuel handled administration and funding. Their partnership had evolved into something seamless, each complementing the other's strengths. 2 years after their wedding, they opened a second campus in Austin. 3 years later, a third in Houston. The Cedar Ridge Educational Institute became a network of schools changing lives across Texas. Former students returned as teachers, creating a self-sustaining cycle of education and opportunity. The auction block girl who was deemed too colored had become one of the most respected educators in the state. Samuel and Henrietta's love story became legend, but not for romantic reasons. People remembered how 2 individuals had chosen partnership over possession, education over ignorance, and hope over despair. On their 5th anniversary, they stood once again in the meadow where they'd married. The ranch now bustled with activity from dawn to dusk. Students, teachers, and visitors filled every building. "Do you ever miss the quiet?" Samuel asked. "Never. This noise is the sound of dreams coming true." They'd named the meadow Freedom Fields, in honor of all the minds they'd helped liberate. A simple stone marker commemorated the spot where their partnership began. As evening approached, they walked hand in hand through their thriving community. Children played while parents attended evening classes. Teachers prepared lessons by lamplight. The sound of voices reading aloud drifted from every window. Henrietta paused at the original classroom, now preserved as a memorial to those first brave students. Marcus's desk still held place of honor in the front row. He wrote to say his son was accepted to university in Chicago, she told Samuel. Your first student's child in university. Margaret would be proud. They continued their walk as stars appeared overhead. The ranch that had once hidden its purpose now stood as a beacon of what was possible when people chose to see beyond the surface. Samuel squeezed Henrietta's hand as they approached the house. Ready to change more lives tomorrow? Henrietta smiled, her eyes reflecting the same determination that had carried her from auction block to educational pioneer. Always,